All right, so we are going to evaluate functions using graphs. So I'm starting with a linear graph. We've done these before. We're going to add in some that are not linear today. When you have function notation, I want to remind you that the x, or the number that's here for the x, is the input. That's what goes into your function. The y is the output. And so we're going to be looking at points on the graph in the form x, y, where this is your input, and this is the output from the rule f of x. Okay? So this is just to sort of remind you how the notation works. So let's use the graph of f of x to answer the following questions. Find f of 3. This 3 is the input. That is my x. So I want to figure out what part of my line has 3 for an x value. So if I find 3 on the x-axis, it's right here, and go down to the line, there's this point right here, which would be 3, -1. So 3 is the input, which means -1 is the output. So they're looking for y. When they have f with the number there, they're looking for the output, which is y. F of x is the rule that gives us the output, the y value. So then when it says find f of -1, remember -1 is an x. So I'm going to go to the x-axis to -1 and then go up to where it crosses my line, so up here, and that's at -1, 7, so my answer is 7. And then f of 0, we're on the x-axis where 0 is the y-axis. So basically we're figuring out where the line crosses the y-axis, just here at 0, 5, so the answer would be 5. So these are pretty straightforward. You're just going to use the x-axis to find the number and the grid to go up or down to wherever it crosses the line to find the y value. Now we're going to switch and go back the other way. So if it says for what value of x does f of x equal 3, that means they're giving us y is 3. So now I have to go to the y-axis and find 3. And go over and see where that lines up, where this line is on the grid line with our function. And so I have the point 1, 3. So 3 is the output, which means that x is the input, which is 1. So the x value 1 gives the output, or the y value 3. Okay? Then on E, where it says for what value of x does f of x equal -7? The f of x, remember, is y. So we're looking for where y is -7. So here's -7 on the y-axis. If I go over to see where this crosses, we have the point 6, -7. So my x value would be 6. And there's one more. I'm going to zoom out so we can see the graph and the question. For what approximate value of x does f of x equals 0? So you have to remember that f of x is a fancy way of saying y. So I have to go to the y-axis to 0, which basically means where is it going to cross the x-axis? So that would be about right here. It looks about 2.50. We don't know for sure what that is without figuring out other things. So we can say that x is approximately 2.5. We don't know exactly what that is unless they give us an equation. Or we find an equation using some points, which we could do, but we're just going to approximate for right now. So you have to decide if they want the x value or the y value and find the points on your graph. So what's going to be a little different this year is your graph could be any sort of shape. So if I go down here, I have, this is a graph, it's a piecewise function, which we're going to learn to graph this year. It has pieces of a bunch of different straight lines that have been stuck together. So it starts off with saying, find f of 0. So remember that whatever's in those parentheses is the x value. So I want to find a point that's on this weird shaped graph where the x value is 0. So right here, I have the point 0, 3. So my x value is 0, and my y value is 3. then it has f of -2. So remember that this is our x. So I'm going to go on the x-axis to -2, go up and see where it hits the graph. What's that answer going to be? 4, because we have the point -2, 4 on the graph. So -2 is the input, 4 is the output. And then f of +2, I would go the other way. Here's +2. I have to go down to find this point, which would be 2, -1. So -1 is my value. And then it says estimate f of 3. So 3 is over here. If I go down, it's going to cross about right there. So maybe -1.5. We don't know for sure, but it's somewhere between -1 and -2, this point right here. It would be 3 and then maybe -1.5. All right, so now they're going to switch it on us, and it wants us to find the values of x such that f of x is -1. So this is where we're looking for y equals -1. So y equals -1 would be anything along this line right here. I'm going to draw it kind of dark along here. There's actually 2 places where this graph crosses at -1. One of them we've already done over here. That was at 2. The other one is over here at the end of this arrow, which is at -5. So both of those are answers. I put a comma in between them. So over here at 2, the y value is -1. Over here at -5, the y value is also -1. So that's why they have value or values with the s in parentheses, is to let us know that there could be more than one answer. All right, so then it says find the value or values of x such that f of x is 3. So remember that we're looking for where y equals 3. So if I come up and sort of draw a line up here at y equals 3, we have one of them already because we had 0, 3. So 0 would be an x value where the y is 3. And then what do you think this one over here is? It's between -2 and -3. Yeah, maybe -2.5, -2.75. You could estimate that in there. If you knew you could figure out the slope pretty accurately, you could have a little bit better idea, but we're just approximating. And so if this were multiple choice, I would say which of the following is most likely to be this point, and you'd pick the one that was close to -2.5. All right, so it says find the value or values such that f of x is 3.5. So I'm going to go up just a half a box from where we just were and approximate where those are. So there's a point here, and there's a point over here. So this one looks pretty easy. That looks like it would just be -1 right here. And over here it looks like maybe -2 1/3. I don't know, maybe -2.25. It's hard because we're just estimating it from the graph, but in general we're just trying to figure out the x that goes with the y or the y that goes with the x.